Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Creative Brief Explores webinar. The theme is based all around thriving creative partnerships and how to pivot in a crisis. So today we'll be uncovering the Avon, Refuge and Red Consultancy partnership and how they managed to create a powerful awareness campaign around domestic abuse called #IsolatedNotAlone during COVID-19. Now let's welcome Natalie, Executive Director of Corporate Affairs and CSR at Avon and President of the Avon Foundation for Women, Lisa King, Director of Communications and External Relations for Refuge,
Hi.
And Jenny Fieldgate, Strategy Director at Red Consultancy. Firstly, guys, thank you so much for joining us in this series. And Natalie and Lisa, I might start with you both first, really just to set the scene here. And Natalie, could you outline Avon's commitment to supporting women via the Avon Foundation and how this really led you to the partnership with Refuge?
Sure. So thank you very much for having us here today. I'm always delighted to talk about the work that we do with Refuge and with Red. Avon is nearly 135 years old now, and we have been supporting women since 1886, both through our business model, which is all about creating opportunities for women to earn and learn. So women were out running their own businesses, earning money with Avon before they had the right to vote. And then more extensively than that, about supporting some of the issues and some of the causes that matter most to women. And really key to that is gender-based violence and intimate partner violence, and what many of us would call domestic abuse. 1 in 3 women will be impacted by abuse during her lifetime. Those statistics are getting worse rather than getting better. So through our business operations, through Avon and through the Avon Foundation, which is our charitable arm, we're committed to supporting frontline services to give immediate aid as well as driving longer term change.
Fantastic, thank you for that outline. And Lisa, I wondered, could you just expand a little bit on the core role of the partnership that you have with Avon and really start to set the scene for our audience with the domestic abuse issues that this country faces?
Great, thank you. So yeah, Refuge has had an amazing and very long-standing partnership with Avon spanning 14 years. It's our longest and most significant partner that Refuge has in its portfolio of supporters. And we, desperately need that support because domestic abuse has been and remains a very taboo subject in this country. As Natalie cited, 1 in 3 women will experience domestic abuse in their lifetime, and 2 women are killed every week at the hands of a current or former partner. The police receive a domestic abuse call every 30 seconds. It's also a huge issue that impacts on children. Over 850,000 children witnessed and experienced domestic abuse last year. So those are just a few figures to really show that it is the biggest issue affecting women and children in this country. And for Refuge's part, we are a provider of services. We run services for women and children, our kind of refuges that women flee to, community programs, helplines. So we provide that level of support and daily support for 6,500 women and children. And so when it comes to our work with Avon, that has been very much for the 14 years in 2 parts. It's very much about raising awareness of the issue, letting women know that Refuge is there to support them, and also raising funds to support some of those frontline services so that we can continue our support to women and grow that, because we rely on corporate voluntary donations very, very much.
Thank you for that outline. And it's shocking, isn't it, and alarming statistics in 2020. I need to fast forward now actually to mid-March when COVID-19 hit the UK. And Natalie, I wondered, could you talk to us a little bit about the insight that you had from China and the UN and what that impacted you to immediately do?
Sure. So as COVID-19 hit the world, we at Avon were really looking at what's our role in this? How are we going to respond? And through our own teams in places like China, through our network of NGOs and partners, we were hearing reports of a 2-fold increase in some places in reports of domestic abuse in China and in other countries, places a little bit closer to home like Italy, who were slightly ahead of the UK. So an unintended consequence of the isolation that was needed to contain the virus was having a knock-on impact, where we were seeing an increase in the number of instances of domestic abuse and an increase in the calls that were going to frontline services like those that Refuge provide. So the kinds of NGOs we work with in the UK, with Refuge and elsewhere, we're starting to see a huge rise in the number of calls that they were getting and desperately needed some more support.
And Lisa, just on that point, I mean, with your Refuge hat on, what were you seeing in terms of COVID-19, in terms of impacting domestic abuse, with your Refuge hat on?
So absolutely, as Natalie has said, we were alarmed and very concerned about the increase in demand that we certainly saw to the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. It's a really busy service on a non-COVID day. So when COVID struck and the pandemic started to play out across the country, it was very concerning to look at the figures, say for May, where we saw a 66% rise in demand to an already very, very busy service, which then rose further in June to 77%. And alongside the calls and contacts to the actual number, we've seen phenomenal rise in numbers visiting our websites, a tenfold increases. We launched a digital platform in early May to ensure we could provide support, silent support really, to women who might need us but can't pick up the phone and aren't able to speak. We've seen hundreds more women turn to that. So it's certainly been a period of time where demand for Refuge's services has been greater than we have ever seen in our near 50-year legacy.
Now, Jenny, you guys were appointed in July, Red Consultancy,
yes.
And sort of, as it sort of hit the UK, you guys were called upon quite quickly from Natalie and the team, and just really keen to understand, how it happened, how you devised the campaign, and what it really consisted of.
Well, I think initially it was one of our weekly calls when Natalie was telling us about all the dreadful statistics that they were getting globally from other Avon countries around the world via their reps. And I know we just all thought this is something that is really important. We need to do something about it. Also, Natalie had said that the initial donation had been made and that Refuge was desperate for the corporates to continue to donate because it was really important at that time. So we felt like it was very much time for us to just activate incredibly quickly. And that was the key, is what could we do very simply, very quickly, just to get some awareness out there. Not only to try and get people to understand that they needed to continue to donate, but also to help people in those situations to understand that there was help out there for them. And again, to the government as well, what else could the government be doing to help these women or people in those situations? So it really came from a call that was just like, we're doing something, what can we do about it? We went away and very quickly came up with a very simple media strategy to execute very quickly, I should say.
And in terms of like the campaign, I know that there were, obviously you had a very important press release with a key donation from Avon in terms of that announcement, but there were a whole host of like social assets and so forth, weren't there?
So I think key to it is Lisa and Refuge very kindly gave us some very good stats in terms of hard news driving, what the issue is, what the increase in domestic abuse is, as well as what we'd seen in the rest of the world on how it had gone up during the lockdowns or the national lockdowns. So we had some great stats which gave us that hard news edge. We had Avon's commitment not only to the initial £150,000 donation, but also they had very quickly mobilized to create a grant, a worldwide grant through the Avon Foundation to provide more help to charities around the world, support charities around the world. So what we really wanted to do is a hard news driver, plus the commitment that Avon had made to try and encourage other people to continue to make those commitments as well. And then we did some very quick turnaround social assets using the isolated not alone hashtag and some stats, just so that Avon and its like massive social channels all across the world could really get out there, share it, let people know that they're not alone, let people know that support is out there, who they should call and what they should do. So it wasn't anything complicated. In terms of our media strategy, the news went out. Lisa did a lot of radio broadcast interviews via Skype, which we were very grateful for. That was a key part of the campaign, because media consumption during COVID was going up. So if you are in your home, radio could be the only thing that you could have access to if you're in a terrible, a domestic abuse situation. So it was really important for us to get that kind of regional broadcast element going to it. And then of course, the very hard media selling into news outlets and lifestyle outlets as well.
Great, thank you, Jenny. And at the same time that this was happening, Priti Patel sort of clarified that women could leave homes or go to police, if they were suffering from domestic abuse. Lisa, I wondered, could you talk to us a little bit more about this? Because I think it was soon after you guys had launched hashtag isolated not alone that this happened.
Yeah, that's right. Priti Patel made it much clearer that the women could leave if they needed to, and that they had the right to contact the police and access safety. So we were reassured to see that. I think the government probably had been watching what was going on around them and had seen a lot of activity, such as this kind of great campaign with Avon, and probably realised quite late in the day, perhaps, that it needed to issue some messages in relation to supporting those who were experiencing domestic abuse. Just to go back to Jenny's point, I think very much that our campaign and the great opportunity to literally a day of back-to-back media interviews gave an opportunity to, and perhaps also gives insight as to why we've seen such increase in demand to our services. Because as Jenny said, the world got so much smaller. Those things that were relevant to COVID got a lot of attention, domestic abuse being one of them. People could start to actually relate to what it might be like for a woman experiencing domestic abuse, where lockdown is her everyday life, irrespective of COVID and otherwise. So to have that opportunity and to talk about domestic abuse and to talk about the subject in a much more extended way than we've ever done really before, to go beyond kind of just snippets of information, to explain what power and control is, how women are controlled beyond broken bones and black eyes, so that women could really identify and understand, I think is in part the reason why we have seen such increase in demand to our services, because women have had that light bulb moment through the campaigns that we've run, through the media interviews that we've undertaken, to understand that, golly, that person who that woman's describing is me. I am being controlled. And with that, I think part of the reason why the demand has been so great.
Lisa, you mentioned that obviously, there was a lot of noise, wasn't there? And obviously you guys were pushing that noise and awareness, which was so important during that time. But obviously that does mean that like the media landscape was, quite cluttered. So I wondered, Jenny, with the rise of the topic of domestic abuse happening, you've got the government campaigning, you guys are pushing from a very good position as well. Like, how did you manage the media landscape and how did you ensure cut through? And I wondered, were there any challenges?
Yeah, I think the media landscape has been extremely challenging over the last few months. Very, very busy, obviously. But we've also seen loads of journalists being furloughed, which means loads of other journalists have had to cover beats that they've never had to cover before. So actually, one of the issues we faced was getting in front of the right people and getting to the right people. We knew we had a strong story, and we knew that there was appetite to print it, or to publish or to broadcast it. It was just about who was the best person to talk to, how did we get them to listen to us. And also that week was extremely busy from a news agenda point of view. That was the week where actually the UK nearly reached the 1,000 COVID daily death toll. So I think it was on the day that we launched our campaign that happened. So, clearly it's definitely a topic that, people wanted to write about and wanted to hear from us about. So we had that completely on our side. It was literally just, how do we get in touch of and in front of the right people?
Yeah. And in terms of, the campaign, like how it performed and how it is performing, can you talk to us a little bit about the results, Jenny, first, and Natalie, if you have any builds after that as well, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, we were extremely pleased with the initial results. Obviously, we said broadcast was very important, particularly getting into people's homes. So we had a lot of broadcast interviews, regional, as I said, coverage across national newspapers, across lifestyle magazines, lifestyle publications, which was really important for us as well. So pleased with those results. I think around 7 million opportunities to see. And then, of course, the assets for the social channels. I think in the UK alone, we saw 10 million impressions of those social assets. So they really were shareable, and they really did start to make an impact. And then, of course, those were all translated and used globally as well.
Mm-hmm. And Natalie, what were you seeing, from an Avon perspective in terms of results and what you were trying to achieve collectively with Lisa as well?
This issue is so difficult to get attention for. There are two things that are really important that we do. One is raise and donate funds, and the other is to speak out and raise awareness of it. And as we've alluded to, whilst it was still really tough to get cut through, this was an amazing opportunity to raise awareness of this issue. Red really led the way and did an incredible job of delivering in the UK. And this was really part of a much bigger global initiative for Avon. So beyond the UK, we were able to activate across all of the markets in which we operate. So this campaign, Isolated Not Alone, was launched in 50 countries. We've gained over 200 million in terms of reach and impressions, and that's partly through earned media, but also, as Jenny alluded to, through these shareable assets. And we have an amazing network of over 5 million Avon representatives, our beauty advisors, who are really engaged in this issue and are an amazing vehicle for us to really spread the word. Because speaking out and raising awareness, signposting where to go to for help, making sure that we are engaging in this as an issue is really the entry-level starting point. So through the social assets, with a really clear call to action, we were able to mobilize our communities. And beyond that, we have started on some open dialogue with governments across the world to ask them to keep this front of mind. We will continue to support this issue, but it's really important that legislators and people that are driving forward the post-COVID agenda really keep this front of mind as well. So we're going to continue to keep the pressure up on that, because this doesn't go away. As we've said, the statistics are getting worse, and we need to make sure that we keep it front of mind and we continue to speak out. And whilst we will evolve the campaign beyond isolation, that core message to reach women, for them to know that they are not alone, is really important.
I think Lisa also gave us the stat, told us that after the campaign launched and we had the media coverage, there was 120% increase in calls, which is extraordinarily sad, but also good to know that we were able to actually make a bit, hopefully some impact in getting people to call up and ask for help.
Lisa, I wondered, did you have any sort of learnings from your side during this whole sort of COVID lockdown, and obviously working so closely with Avon and Red?
Well, I mean, certainly to have the ability to respond with such speed and such pace and put out information in an extraordinarily difficult situation is fantastic, and absolutely support what Jenny said. The content that we put out there will in part be a significant reason behind the increase in demand that we've seen. If you don't understand the problem, you can't reach out and get help. Many people don't understand that domestic abuse is a crime. They don't understand Refuge is there. So this has been a great way, albeit very sad and distressing, to share the fact that Refuge exists and that our services are there 24/7 for women and children, and to turn to the donation that Avon made to Refuge. that was a significant amount of money, £150,000. Lockdown, when we went into lockdown 23rd of March, and Avon called to let us know that donation was coming through within a week. I mean, when I got the call, I was so emotionally overwhelmed. I think I had a little tear. Couldn't believe that the generosity, on top of what we already get a year through the work of Avon and its representatives to support us, to have that one-off donation to support us in a time of crisis was absolutely amazing. And it also meant that when I subsequently had an opportunity to do an awful lot of media interviews over the course of the next 2 weeks, I could cite that and give that as an example of the funding issues and the challenges that COVID created for Refuge, the emergency response that Avon had given. And we have subsequently raised a lot more money, and that is in part as a result of others seeing corporates like Avon take action and think we should really be doing the same. And it led the way, led that support, and that's been brilliant for us, and it has meant we've been able to keep things running in this terrible of times.
Yeah. And Jenny, I want to come to you, just with your agency hat on, are there any learnings for our audience to share, really?
Yeah, I think pace and agility, absolutely, that is the key to this. Just do things as quickly as you possibly can, get it out there. Don't overthink it too much. Sometimes that you just need to get messages out there when it's something as important as this. And with the media landscape changing so rapidly, the situation changing so rapidly, you just have to be able to, as this is called, pivot very quickly in terms of what you do. If you have an idea for something, 2 days later, it might not work anymore. So you need to just make sure you're constantly adapting to the situation that's out there. It's like nothing I've ever really experienced in my career. And it's been incredibly challenging, and, in this particular case, incredibly rewarding as well.
Thank you. Lisa and Natalie, when we spoke about sort of, the future and almost like, the legacy and how you can continue this on, one observation is that, throughout sort of this global pandemic, there's been like a lot of empathy from organizations who've donated, but also through individuals who supported the domestic abuse and the cause. So I wondered how will you and the team continue to ensure that, this is not lost, as we evolve during and as we hopefully come out of the pandemic?
So this team really led the way back in March. As Jenny said, we mobilised incredibly quickly, and I'm so proud of the work this team did to do that initial leap in the UK, which then became this amazing global campaign with a $1 million donation from the foundation, this activation in 50 countries. And that is really just the start. Or perhaps that's one of the peaks, perhaps. Avon has supported this issue for 14 years, and right now we are needed more than ever to drive this forward. So we had a great moment to stand up and to drive the agenda forward, to signpost help, to get more discussion around the issue. And our big challenge as we move forward is to make sure we're able to create other moments in time. So from an Avon perspective, we are looking at how can we find more opportunities to continue to resurface the conversation. We're seeing a lot of commentary at the moment about the disproportionately highly negative impact on women that's resulting from the pandemic. So that gives us an opportunity. We have various moments coming up in the calendar that we can mobilize around. So for us, it's continuing to make sure that we create opportunities to speak out, for our representatives to speak out. And actually Speak Out was our long-standing campaign around gender violence. So we will pivot back to that and continue to make sure that we take every opportunity we can. And sometimes it's very opportunistic to speak out and keep this front of mind, keep raising funds and keep raising awareness.
Perfect. Well, gosh, what a good place to end. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. So I just want to say a very, very, very big thank you to all three of you, Natalie, Lisa, and Jenny. You know, thank you for sharing your very important story, and thank you for joining us at home or in the office or wherever you may be. You know, we really hope that you enjoyed the webinar. And in the meantime, please do take care and be well. Thank you again. Bye-bye.